Have you ever felt that you could have got the job if you were interviewed face to face rather than over the phone or video interview? Unfortunately, nowadays, many interviews are conducted over the phone or via interview due to the high amount of applicants and innovative technology. The question is, could learning phone communication skills really help you to get that job? Welcome to Better Medias. My name is Andrew Fan, and today I'm going to introduce to you a phone skills trainer who has been coaching sales professionals for almost a decade. Jonine Baker, founder of Lead Farmers, will be sharing with you today the necessary tips on how to leave a lasting impression. Without further ado, let's welcome Jonine Baker. Thank you, Jonine, for your time today. As we know, during this time, it will be difficult for many, and those unfortunately had lost their job or been stood down. With that being said, there will be many re-entering the workforce and will require to go through the interview process. Many people are finding that they have to reinvent themselves, and now finding the big part of the process is conducted over the phone instead of face-to-face. So let's say you've submitted an application online and have just received a phone call from the HR. Jonine is here to give us pointers on how you can strengthen your phone communication skills. Jonine, could you please give us a brief background about your company and how did you venture onto phone sales training?
Sure. So my business is called Lead Farmers, and that name came about because our part of our service is we help sales-centric organisations farm their leads. So we assist with scripting and communication strategies, training their staff to communicate better over the phone with people on their database. Now, this business I started about 10 years ago and decided as part of that I was going to conduct a study, and that was to analyse the communications between salespeople or customer service people and the actual client at the other end of the phone. I wanted to understand the strengths and weaknesses of a call, and all other nuances that led led to a call being successful and not so successful. And I've probably to date analysed more than 100,000 calls, I think.
Fantastic. Wow, that's amazing. Thank you for
It's a
sharing
lot of
that.
calls. Yeah.
It's a really good cause and good story that you share. I'm just going to
Mhm.
dive straight into the questions if you don't mind. So,
Sure.
um, what were some of the common mistakes that you discovered during your journey when people are making over the phone?
Okay. One of the misconceptions, I think, for many is that they have to have a certain type of personality to win the hearts of people on the other end of the call, the listener, and often make the mistake of taking far too much personality to a call. And therefore, in behind that personality is a lot of energy. And it's often referred to in my industry as the kiss of death. So when you take too much energy to a phone call, this conveys as a massive intrusion down the other end of the line if the other person is not matching or on that same frequency. So that was one of the issues. Many were guilty of trying to tell the customer too much about themselves too earlier on in the conversation. So they were very quick to share how wonderful they were, how many industry awards they have, how many wonderful features and benefits they have to their products or service before they'd even established the needs of that person on the call. And a big part of that, which leads me to the next point, is they lacked the curiosity in their customer. Now, when I say lack the curiosity, initially I think part of that is people get very nervous about asking questions. They think that's an intrusion, and it can often be seen as being too interrogating. But this is not actually the case, and I've heard many calls where people have started to babble on about how great they are and then discover that none of that is relevant to the client's needs. So asking questions was probably one of the other major things I found these calls lacked.
That is great. Very, very useful insight. And I
Mm.
totally agree. Totally agree. Next
Mm.
question. What strategies can you implement over the phone to succeed during the phone interview?
Look, I know I can say this from my own experience too, from many years ago when I used to find myself in this situation. And I imagine too, for perhaps even older people now, mature people who are finding themselves back in a situation where they're needing to look for jobs. Um, you can get very nervous when you know an interview phone call is due. Um, it's so important to calm yourself, and the best way to calm yourself is become very conscious of your breathing, taking deep breaths from the belly, not just from the chest. This will calm your whole physiology. So to me, that is probably the primary thing I would start with. um, Practicing a nice warmth about your smile. It can't be a laugh, it can't be exaggerated. But when you smile on a phone call where there are no other elements there to help you with the discussion, the warmth the smile can actually convey a warmth in your voice. It also helps to open up the throat, so the sound is much more clearer to the person on the other end. So definitely practicing a good smile. Watch how you're sitting. Now, when you're sitting up straight in a chair, you'll notice that your neck tends to come up straight as well, automatically, and that opens all your throat. Your tone is a very powerful tool over the phone, so I often put a lot of emphasis on trying to get that tone right. It actually is responsible for 75% of the impact of the call, believe it or not. So sitting up straight holds everything in alignment and it keeps the throat open. Now, also to help you with your confidence, you will find if you put both your feet firmly on the ground, it helps centers you, and that also helps with your confidence as well. Now, be very careful. A lot of people can suggest to you that you stand during one of these calls. That will give you confidence. But standing while on a call, particularly an initial call between yourself and a recruitment company, or the initial call, even if you're in a sales situation, when you stand and talk to somebody, you can tip the call over into a sound of dominance. So I've seen many people do it on the sales floor. You often see it in the exchange and that, where people are standing up and they're trying to ram their message home and they're standing and they're pacing. You don't want to find yourself in that situation, conveying that strength in your voice. So sitting down is definitely highly recommended. Um, uh, and having that calmness about yourself is foremost important.
Fantastic. I didn't know about that. But when you stand up, that you have more. How do I say it? You create more
Dominance of
dominance. Yeah.
in a call. And that's fine when you're comfortable with the client and they're comfortable with your confidence in what you're
Mm.
doing, but not on an initial call and certainly not through an initial interview with a client.
Oh, fantastic. That leads us to our last question. How can learning phone skills enhance your ability to get a job?
Well, first, if I can highlight the obvious, that is when you're face to face with somebody, and I mentioned this earlier, there are so many things that are distracting their eye and that are helping them to form a judgment about you. And that's your clothing, it could be how cool your phone is, it could be how you're sitting in the seat and the way you conduct yourself and your personal grooming. But none of this happens over the phone. You've strictly got your voice. It's your only power, it's your only tool. And it's very difficult to prepare yourself because you can't just ring somebody up like me and say, can you give me a swift training session on phone skills? I think in these cases, you are your best teacher. So I would suggest that you get your mobile phone and record a conversation. Now, you might ring a friend and say, look, I just want to record a casual conversation with you. Do you mind if I do that? And we just chat. And then listen back over that call, and the things you want to pick up on. I realize you're probably going to be very comfortable speaking with a friend, but the things you want to pick up on is how fast are you speaking? Now, when you have a fairly fast pace of speech, this can escalate the stress levels of a person on the other end of the phone. They may also struggle to keep up with what you're saying if you have a broad accent. So, listening out for how fast you speak, and on the phone, it's probably quite good to slow it down a little bit. The other thing you want to be very careful of is the tone in which you speak. Now, in day to day conversation, not so critical. But over the phone, particularly with women, we tend to speak at a slightly higher octave than men. And I would advise that you practice just bringing your voice down another octave. It will convey a calmness in your voice as well. The other thing you want to watch out for is, do you babble? How many words do you use to get your point across on the phone? A lot of people do face to face use a lot of unnecessary words to get their point across. You've got to be very careful about this on the phone, about being a chatterbox. Now, if, for example, a recruiter's calling you, you could be call number 30 for them in a day. And I think we all have a listening budget. Men have a lot less listening budget than females, believe it or not. But if you're caller number 30, their listening budget has been drained. So it's very important that you become very conscious and listen to how many unnecessary words you're using in a phone conversation. I'll give you an example, actually. If I was to introduce myself in a standard everyday business call, this is how I would be saying it. Let's say I'm ringing you, Andrew, and you've answered the call. I go, Andrew, Jonine Baker, lead farmers, just a very quick call. Now, that is what I would call net speaking. There's no babble in there. It's just nice and clean, no unnecessary words. Another person, not so aware, would go, hi, Andrew, it's just Jonine Baker here from Lead Farmers. Just wanted to have a quick chat with you if you've got a moment to speak with me. I'd say probably 3 times the amount of words we used in that introduction, as an example. So that's the other thing you've got to watch out for. Don't babble.
Fantastic. Great. I guess you've answered all the questions, which I believe you've shared a lot of insightful information that I learned myself personally, and a lot of job seekers can start to pick up themselves and just be more confident and get themselves a job. Hopefully, that's the game.
It's a very tough situation to be in, and my heart goes out to anybody that's found themselves in the job seeker market.
If people wanted to reach out to you, how can they?
I do a lot of posts on LinkedIn, so you can just go to my LinkedIn page, which is Jonine Baker, and the spelling of my first name is a bit of a trick. It's Jonine and Baker. So if you're very welcome to visit or connect with me on LinkedIn. I generally post 2 or 3 times a week. Often these are videos with phone tips, otherwise just straight blogs. Otherwise, you can reach out to me through email, and that's Jonine, again with that tricky spelling, at leadfarmers.com.au.
I hope you enjoyed the video and have learned insightful information that you can start implementing right away. Please let me know in the comments below, and also don't forget to like, subscribe and share our content, because it will help us to make more videos like this. Thank you.